Well, 'cause so many of his roles, it's based on a pretty alpha character. Like he's very glib and he's very smart ass, and he's always sort of in control, even when he's losing his shit.
He's always overcompensating.
Like he's always like funnier or smarter or like the better character. You know, there's always a Bradley Whitford to contrast him with, to just be the total lamoid. But in this movie, it's like, yeah, you take that sort of impulse for aggression, like just out of nowhere aggression, and you do something different with it. I think it's so wonderful how it's also a type of character, like a very nervous character who can't express himself at all, is basically reacting for like the first half of the movie and doesn't take action. It's kind of like Drive in that way almost. This and Drive are spiritual films.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Le Grand Bouffe.
The Big Feast.
With myself, Cole Smithey, and my co-host, Mike Lacy. Hey, Mike, you want to introduce our special guest?
This is my very good friend, Kenji Mason. We went to high school together.
Mm-hmm.
We went to college together. And he's here today to talk about one of his favorite movies.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, Kenji. I understand that you are a Filmstruck aficionado.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great program. I've kind of been waiting for that for a long time. Had a lot of problems with Hulu, but you know.
Yeah, so we were excited because we thought you were going to pick a Filmstruck movie to watch,
Sure.
and then you threw a curveball at the last minute.
I thought it was on there myself. They have other PTAs on there, I think, right?
I think they have Sydney, Hard Eight, you know.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us, Kenji, about when you first saw this movie and what speaks to you about this film.
Oh, so should we say what it is?
Yeah, go.
No. Let's keep going. Let's keep going.
It's in the title is the thing.
It's Zootopia.
Okay.
I thought it was Zentropa.
Okay.
Well, we're gonna take all of this out, right?
No, this is good. This is gold. This is gold.
Europa.
For us, this is gold-rific right here.
Perfect. So yeah, the movie Punch Drunk Love. I first saw it. I must have been 13 over at a friend's house, and he had a very. My brother was away at college at this point, but he had a cooler older brother, and
Oh, I really want to know who you're talking about.
he was from elementary school. You don't know him.
Oh,
sorry.
We went to different elementary schools.
But yeah, looking back on the things that he sort of introduced me to, it's a lot of beginner level. I don't know. He loved the Boondock Saints.
Okay.
He loved the philosophy, I guess, and
Oh my God.
the action.
I am very scared.
And
So he's feeling great about the
frightened.
modern world right
well,
now.
like if I could pick out what his favorite movies seemed to be at the time, it was like Donnie Darko,
Fight Club.
Fight Club.
How did I know that?
There you go.
How did I know?
Well, certain types of people in the suburbs get a care package when they turn a certain age, and it has all these DVDs. But he had Punch Drunk Love, and I remember being very struck by the cover because I certainly wasn't not an Adam Sandler fan. I wouldn't say I was a huge Adam Sandler fan, but it looked like such a strange movie. The cover is just his profile. I had never seen Boogie Nights or Magnolia at this point. And it really fucked me up the first time I saw it. It really scared me, I guess.
Okay.
It really just made me like viscerally uncomfortable.
It's a very uncomfortable movie to watch.
Very uncomfortable movie, but it's a movie that I've seen so many times that now it's just like it just makes me laugh so much, and I see that it's very uncomfortable, and occasionally I'll recommend it to friends, and they'll come back and be like, "Why did you tell us to watch that? That was a weird bummer." And
So-
I don't get it. I personally have a great time. But,
So what scene makes you squirm the most?
there's little snatches of dialogue, because I would say it's probably the scene where Emily Watson, who plays his love interest, comes to his place of work with his sister, and like everything's going wrong, kinda. He's got, this kind of gets into plot elements, but
Yeah, it's fine. You can talk plot.
okay. Well, it's basically about this guy Barry Egan, who's a very nervous man played by Adam Sandler, and I don't know. It's just watching his life change and him falling in love.
Right, he suffers from severe social anxiety.
Yeah,
I would say.
Yeah. I think that's a fair assessment. He's constantly second guessing himself and saying the wrong things. There are a lot of malapropisms in this, which I just love because I do that so often, where I say the wrong thing and hope, fingers crossed, that nobody notices.
Oh, they noticed.
They notice. But yeah, he sells novelty plungers out of a warehouse in Los Angeles.
He probably has some illegal immigrants working for him.
Sure.
I'm guessing.
Maybe. I mean,
entirely possible.
yeah.
I think Luis Guzman is documented. Wait,
I think he's good. I think Luis is he's okay.
It's a good versus bad thing.
No. I just think he's higher up in the
some good hombres and some bad hombres.
Well, he's higher up in the pecking order, and that's fine.
But yeah, it's a weird movie because there's a bunch of disparate plot elements, and seemingly any one of them could kind of be the focus of a weird indie rom-com. Like it's a romance, but there's also this element of he's buying a lot of pudding to take advantage of this loophole about airline miles,
right?
Because it's like the cost of buying individual packs of pudding to get the barcodes. It's
comes down to about a quarter a piece, and somehow there's some special coupon that doubles or quadruples each one. He's found the magic formula.
And also at the same time, he is being extorted by a sex hotline.
By a phone sex operator
who he gave all of his information to.
Yeah, when he gives the social security number, that's a squirmy moment for me.
That's a real squirmy moment.
Yeah, he's like, my social? Okay.
And then he does it. And that's, oh my God, that's just, that to me, yeah. And I just want to mention that obviously P.T. Anderson drew from a lot. He pulls from a lot of films. There's a lot of references to different movies in here with the Seven Sisters and, yeah, I mean, when Sandler does his little Chaplin-esque dance down the aisle, there's a lot of little touches. So it's a very artfully put together film, and it's so much about. It's a minimalist film. It's really about the tone. Has a little bit of magical realism in it.
A friend of mine from high school or from college, friend Zach, used to refer to it as like a fairy tale for adults, which I always really liked because it does sort of take place in this heightened, strange. I mean, it's.
Yeah, the tone is very jarring.
Yeah,
when the truck, Adam Sandler's character, his office space is in this industrial parking area or whatever, and he walks to the street. And there's this terrible accident that happens. This truck flips over, and somehow this piano comes out of the truck. It's a horrible accident. It's so loud and jarring, and there's a lot of violent moments in the movie. Not a lot, but there are a series.
They're
of
like jump scares, basically. There's
Yeah.
a lot of like loud, crashing, sudden moments that are kind of give you a peek into sort of his mind frame. I mean, I feel like this is a very subjective film sort of through his perspective, and
yeah, I wonder how much of it is about Anderson, is because I think he was coming off of a divorce or a breakup or something. Do you know anything about that?
I mean, I believe he was dating Fiona Apple when Magnolia was made.
Okay.
I don't know if they ended their relationship before this.
I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
Can we pivot real quick
Oh, shall we?
to
The beer?
because it's super topical. I got us a beer called Banish the Dark from Newburgh Brewing Company. I like the name and the fact that it's 12% alcohol. But the name, because one thing, even picking up a through line of what you've been saying, is there's a serious darkness in this movie to this character, and then this sort of willingness to finally for him to get out of his comfort zone, to get out of that, to both fight back against the dark forces against him, and I think in himself a little bit. So I thought out this beer pretty well, even though it was one of the 12 options I had at the Whole Foods.
It's very beautiful, Mike.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
that's we appreciate your effort and respect you gladly for making it. It's a bomber. Mike got the big old bomber, Banish the Dark, an Imperial collaboration with Whole Foods Market. Hey,
It's a Russian Imperial Stout. I don't know how many Russian beers we've had on this show before.
I don't know. Winter is a time for darkness when sunlight is scarce and nights are long. Beat back the shortening of the light with Banish the Dark, our Russian Imperial Stout brewed with pomegranate juice and cinnamon. Heavy in body, dark in color, and rich in flavor, Banish the Dark begs to be shared with friends on a cold night beside a fireplace. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
There
it's
you
like
go.
kind of sweet and bitter, right? Like, yeah, I don't think I would have named the pomegranate, but I can get that.
Yeah, it's almost got a black cherry kind of thing going.
Personally, I'm basically taste blind, so I'm sure this tastes great. It doesn't taste not great to me.
Can you not? You cannot. You don't taste that. How do you smell? You smell all right? You got a good smell.
I'm a smoker, so not really.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
You go. Well, have you quit? Come back in a year, drink this beer, and you're like, yeah, this sucks.
I'll get it. Then I'll get the movie. And finally.
You can go see that lady and Get Out, and she'll stir the tea, and Catherine Keener will stir the teacup, and then you won't smoke anymore.
And then I'll go to the nowhere place. Let's just
Shit.
pivot and talk about Get Out again.
Do you want to do it? Should this be your
out
new? Should this be your new crash?
It's a bait and
Pre-
switch podcast.
Previously,
No.
when we were kind of bored of the movie, we would just talk about Crash. But maybe we can just pivot to Get Out from now on.
Yeah. No, I think we're gonna have to bring back Crash. Do you have any
The Cronenberg crash?
Yeah, the Cronenberg crash.
Yeah.
No.
anything about that?
Well, I don't know. Maybe you're doing a revision.
there is a simile
The
between
new-
this film and Crash, because there are car crashes.
There are well, I would say both of these. Well, at least for Crash, that was definitely a movie that I watched because it came on Sundance when I was 13, and it had sexual situations, so I was rearing to go, and boy, had
Was
he.
Sundance unrated? That was like a
Sundance was
unedited-
fucking crazy. I don't know if it was
like
unrated.
IFC. Remember when IFC didn't have commercials and there were
Remember when
Christina Ricci titties on it?
Yeah, didn't show Rollerball, which they have done, and when it was the independent film channel, not just IFC, like KFC.
Right.
I liked what the was it log line, I guess, of the drink, because when I first connected with this film really intensely, it was at school a couple of years ago, and it was the winter, and it snowed so much that classes were canceled for basically 2 weeks, which was great for everyone. Everyone had a really good time the first couple of days. As for me, a very anxious person who is very susceptible to seasonal affective disorder, I just went into such a existential hole and basically watched the same 3 movies over and over
What movies
again.
did you watch?
I watched this movie, Punch Drunk Love, and I watched Raising Arizona because that's just I don't know. I watched that and it's like, yeah, I feel pretty good now. And I think Broadcast News, I believe, those were the ones that I had on my hard drive, but also those probably would have been the ones I would have chosen if I had more.
So very Holly Hunter heavy.
Very Holly Hunter heavy. Yeah.
What
She's the only thing missing from Punch Drunk Love.
connects this movie with those two to you? Because those are much more
I don't-
lighthearted.
Yeah, definitely, but I don't know. They all kind of fill me with the same sort of glee. They all make me feel really happy, and that's a weird thing about this movie, which for at least half of its running time seems sort of hell bent on making you feel like as uncomfortable as possible.
Well, I think Emily Watson is a better casting choice than Holly Hunter would have been in this role.
Oh, I just want Holly Hunter to just walk in the background of scenes and
Oh,
say
okay.
one crazy order.
She should be a sister.
She just
clearly.
orders a drink very loudly
Well,
and then walks off.
This was Emily Watson's breakout film, so that's pretty interesting to me. She had done Breaking the Waves before this, but no one saw that movie, even though it's a great, great movie, and
I bet you Paul Thomas Anderson saw that movie.
Oh, I'm sure, no question about it. And we should really do that film
Yeah.
for the podcast. Breaking the Waves. Have you seen it?
Love that movie. Huge
It's an
bummer.
incredible
It'll take
movie.
me a while to see it again, probably, but great movie.
So
So a little magical realism with
Right.
with the piano. This piano
I was
gets
going to ask about
gets dumped out of this
scene.
crashing truck.
Well, there's the car crash first, and then the piano gets dropped off in
By
a
someone.
taxi. And you've seen this movie a lot more than me. You just saw it recently. What's up with that car crash? It's immediately you're thrown into a very subjective
I think it's
reality.
I don't know. It's I don't want to say anything definitive about this movie, obviously, because it's not my baby. I didn't make it. But in interviews that I've seen with Paul Thomas Anderson, where he's surprisingly straightforward about his intentions, where he says like, "Oh, I just wanted to make a romantic comedy with Adam Sandler. I wanted to make something very entertaining," and then this came out. When he refers to the car crash, he talks about it just being sort of like a band playing their big song at the opening of a concert to like get everyone's attention. Just sort of, I think, like a
device,
an immediate like destabilizing device, which I think you kind of don't know what's going to happen.
But I think you can imply into his character too that is his interpretation of the world. That crash isn't a literal event. It's something that he imagines, and he lives his life with this fear. He's this guy who has the sort of Damocles hanging over him all the time. That's why he has all this social anxiety, because he's afraid of everything, really. Because
it's a jarring, extremely abrasive moment that's preceded by about 40 seconds of just straight silence, and it's the valley at dawn, basically, and you're just watching cars, and you wouldn't expect anything to go wrong. What I realized watching this movie for like the 8 millionth time recently is that when he leaves his office, he doesn't walk to the gates. He's still right by his office. Like the camera sort of peeks around and looks down the road, but he's way back there. And so he just sees the car like kind of crashing around, and he's just standing back there, shaking his head as nervous as ever.
Right, he's drinking a cup of coffee or something.
And then hard cut to another phone call, which this movie has about 8,000 of.
That scene makes me very conscious of every specific element, like talking about the gates. I feel like a movie that is giving you so little to work with, you just start seeing things symbolically.
Mm-hmm.
And I became obsessed with his coffee cup, and he has this, he's clutching it very hard, and he has this intense relationship with it. And then I think it's when Emily Watson shows up, he winds up dropping it and abandoning it. And it's such a little thing, and could have actually been just not even improvised, but actually done on set. But you have so little to work with that, like, I felt myself seeing something in everything, and I'm like, oh, he's like dropping his little
the
baggage,
emotional baggage, the Darjeeling Limited emotional baggage.
Well, I just want to know, how much of it is Paul Thomas Anderson, because did he have a lot of sisters, for example?
I think he had 3 or 4 sisters.
Because it seems like he's making some commentary about being henpecked in this movie. Because this guy is really henpecked. And let's just get to the heart of Sandler's character, because he's a really nice guy, and he is professional in his way with his business.
He's just started wearing this suit.
Yeah, it's the first day that he's wearing the suit, which I find so hilarious.
Electric blue.
What'll be known as a Pete Campbell suit.
It literally makes him
double-breasted
blend
suit
into the background of his warehouse. Like, that's his idea of being professional. It's just like literally looking like the walls.
But he has a psychological issue. He has a trigger that his sisters all know how to put their fingers on so easily, and it's because they called him Gay Boy at a party, and he took a hammer and busted the plate glass, and they always taunt him. So when he goes to this party and they're all there, the first thing they do, they're already talking about him when he comes in the door.
He almost leaves when he hears them through the door.
Would have been better if he had just left.
And by party, it's one of these family...
One of the sisters' birthdays.
It's one of the sisters' birthdays, but it's one of these family events that you go to, and you don't have kids, everyone else does, and so there's just like all of this stuff that is about kids, and it's this whole world that he's like clearly like not a part of, and
it's a very female-driven world that he has
it's female,
stepped
but it's
into.
also children, and there's these husbands who like he's not gonna even relate to them. It's like a married people thing. They're grown-ups thing, and he business is great. That's kind of all you can say. How's
Business
it going?
is very food.
Business is very food. Yeah.
And then he makes the mistake of asking one of the guys if he knows where he can get some
mental help.
Some mental help.
The great Robert Smigel in a wonderful cameo.
Who is a dentist.
Who is a dentist. And
not the best expert at giving referrals.
I do remember seeing the trailer for this. I can't remember during what movie, but in like 2002 or something. And I remember that was like the I'm a dentist line. That was like the big clip. It was just that basically, and like Jeremy Blake illustrations and then, sort of contextless shots. But I remember it's like, oh, this is a comedy, y'all.
Yeah,
like,
that's the best. That's the most clear joke in the movie.
It's like in
probably.
Rushmore, how when they would show it on Comedy Central, they would always pick out the one part where Luke Wilson's talking about his OR scrubs and Jason Schwartzman says, "Oh, are they?" Like, it's like the one part where it's like, oh yeah, this is a joke happens. Yeah, no, I mean, it's a funny part, but it's like, I can't even imagine how you would pitch this movie. I mean, it's just the clout of coming off of Magnolia and sort of having carte blanche, like second round of carte blanche, because, like Boogie Nights, he was handed the world, and then he did Magnolia, and then he did this really strange, odd
Once again,
film.
with the late, great Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Oh, one of the best Philip Seymour Hoffman scenes.
He
around.
really does rip it up in this this great scene, that showdown that happens between Adam Sandler's character.
Is this the movie that you've shown me that clip? Like, yeah, this has to be. Like, I whenever I go to Kenji's apartment, this clip will be brought up on the internet because Kenji will just like
I have
Chromecast
YouTube
stuff.
amnesia.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, he just throws things on the TV, and I've watched this clip like a million times. Can you describe what this clip is? It's a deleted
what it
scene
is,
from
I
this
guess
movie.
it's a deleted scene. And it's a commercial for Philip Seymour Hoffman's Mattress Man character, Dean Trumbull, I believe his name is, and it's a complete recreation of this actual local ad in California, which had been circulated, where a man's walking on like a huge big rig, and he's sort
got
of
an electric guitar.
yeah, without a lot of soul, just sort of strumming a guitar and talking about his mattresses and the big deals. And he jumps off the side of it and lands on a mattress, but immediately hops off and falls basically 6 feet to the ground, where he's immediately swarmed by PAs. And to Philip Seymour Hoffman's, that guy's the greatest, one of the best. He actually ostensibly did it. He jumped on the bed.
It's like a second for second.
It's a perfect slapstick moment. That's another thing in this moment in this movie. There's several moments where it's just like a pratfall, and it's just, yeah, it's like Paul Thomas Anderson just wanted to really make a really funny, I guess I don't want to say broad because that's kind of got baggage to that term, but yeah, there's just moments that they just make me laugh so hard. Adam Sandler falling, Adam Sandler just freaking out, but it's encased in this movie, which is,
Well, it comes down to this relationship that builds between he and Emily Watson's character, and it's a great. You really feel like you're seeing into their characters because he doesn't have this inclination to lie. He's an honest person, so when she asks,
you think so? Because I think
Yeah,
I think he's constantly lying.
no,
just
but
to
he
sort
doesn't.
Of cover
He
up
doesn't.
The truth.
He doesn't lie to her.
Yeah.
When she asks him, about his reasons for stuff. Even he hides the temper thing, but he does later bring it up and apologize.
Well, there
for
is
it.
that great moment when in that scene where she comes to his office that his sister, played by the really hilarious Marilyn Rice-Cub, is like, "Why are you wearing that suit? Were you crying? I heard you were crying. Like, what's with all the pudding?" She's just barraging him with these questions, and eventually it's Emily Watson and Adam Sandler, and it's one of my favorite moments where he goes, I wore this suit because I had an important meeting. The pudding is someone else's. I don't have a crying problem. Like, he goes through this.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, like, none of this that you've heard is true about me. I'm a normal, nice guy.
He does lie to her though, right? He says he travels and he'll meet her in Hawaii, and maybe he's saying because he's for business getting all of this pudding. It's
But
hard
he
to tell what
explains-
he
he
sees as
explains
the truth
the
and what's
pudding
not.
to her.
Well,
He
yeah,
doesn't-
eventually
he
comes
doesn't
through
do
with
that.
it. But it's
Eventually,
the
yeah.
same sort of lying that I, as a very anxious person, is very familiar with it. When, like, his sister asks if he's going to be at the aforementioned party, he says, "No, I have to renew my gym membership." And that is the exact sort of pitiful, like, you're backed into a corner, like, no, I can't do that.
And that's such an obvious lie that you're making a point of lying. You're telling you're telling someone I've got to go wash my dishes.
I
Okay,
think
I'm
that's
sorry,
you,
I got a sink
I
full
don't
of
think
dishes.
that's him, and I don't think that would be you. I mean, like, if you're going, the kind of person that's going to the extent to say, like, that I'm not telling the truth, you could borderline just say that. I
don't think he thinks that he's getting away with it. I think he's literally grabbing onto anything that he think will make him float. It's sort of similar to the scene where he goes on a date with Emily Watson and she brings up I forget what exactly is, like him crying probably, and he goes to the bathroom and he freaks out and he destroys the bathroom and he's confronted by the manager, and he's like, sir, your hand is bleeding, and Adam Sandler has just that great line delivery. It's like, yeah, I cut it on my knife. I cut it on my knife, and then he sort of gives this great little tiny shrug. Like Adam Sandler is so wonderful in this movie. He's so nuanced in his how he conveys his character. Just this little shrug, like, yeah, I cut it on my knife, like a shrug, like that should be good enough, right?
Well, that's the elephant in the room that we haven't really properly addressed is the fact that this probably will go down in history as Adam Sandler's finest hour.
And I don't
Spanglish?
That's
No,
Tia Leone's feminist hour.
Her feminist hour. I like that.
Her finest feminist hour.
Yeah, Madam Secretary can go suck
is
itself.
James
right?
L. Brooks
Yeah.
is best. Yeah, Adam Sandler.
Wait, that's James L. Brooks.
That's James L. Brooks.
were just-
Unfortunately.
Really?
Love you, James. But yeah, I think Adam Sandler. It's he's done a lot of serious movies, and every time he does a serious movie, it's very like capital S serious, capital
Exactly.
A acting. Like,
Yeah.
I am
Which one's-
dealing with the trauma of 9/11. That's why I'm very sad. Or I
The
am.
Don Cheadle movie, right?
Yeah, I am a shoe cobbler, and I haven't seen that one, so I can't say anything about it. But this one, the performance that he gives in this movie, because he's sort of operating on like the entire time he's speaking on that sort of Adam Sandler, like this register, and he's so unsure of everything that he's saying. He's I was reading a Grandland article about this, and he like literally winces at every line of dialogue that he says. Like it pains him to hear how shaky he sounds, and I think it's a wonderful performance because it really, you get the full range of Sandler. You
Yeah,
get
this is for Adam Sandler what Last Tango in Paris was for Brando. That's I really think it.
so there's going to be some
No,
very troubling stories
I
to
just-
come out
I
of
just
Punch
think-
Drunk Love.
I just think that it is a pretty naked performance. It does feel like
They didn't actually tell
that
Luis
there's-
Guzman what the pudding was
That's
for.
true.
They
That there's-
pulled it out on set. He
that-
didn't know what it was
that
there
Adam
for.
Sandler really is this socially neurotic person.
Because so many of his roles, it's based on a pretty alpha character. Like he's very glib and he's very smart ass, and he's always sort of in control, even when he's losing
Right,
his
he's
shit.
he's always overcompensating.
Like he's always like funnier or smarter or like the better character. There's always a Bradley Whitford to contrast him with, to just be the total lamwood. But in this movie, it's like, yeah, you take that sort of impulse for aggression, like just out of nowhere aggression, and you do something different with it. I think it's so wonderful how it's also a type of character, like a very nervous character who can't express himself at all, is basically reacting for like the first half of the movie and doesn't take action. It's kind of like Drive in that way almost. This and Drive are spiritual films.
So I just wanted to talk about where it comes in Paul Thomas Anderson's oeuvre. You've got Magnolia in 2000, and then this came out in 2002, and then you got There Will Be Blood in 2007.
Yeah.
To me,
Did this put him in director's jail? Is that your question?
Well, he won Best Director at
no,
Cannes.
I think
Doesn't
that
help you that
he
much.
was on a. I mean, it's just interesting to see the arc that happens between Magnolia and this movie,
It kind of
and
splits
There
his
Will Be
career in
Blood.
two.
And then The Master, which I personally detest, but that's
One of my favorite movies.
just me.
I think I fall square in the middle of you two. But yeah, I mean, going from these large ensemble-based, like sort of Altman-esque pictures to this one strange, weird film about like a single man, and then continuing on just like the really close character study of a single man or another person.
So much of the movie it feels like Anderson is just riffing on his own life and the filmmaking process at hand. I think it's I'd be curious to know more about how long it took him to write it and what if it was a complete script when he cast it and
Yeah.
it was all set to go.
when you talk about the plot and like the way we've talked about the plot, I think
Yeah, I feel like it doesn't convey the film
exactly.
at all.
You'd like it is a very ridiculous, and it does sound like
A man pays us a lot. There's pudding.
Yeah, no,
It's
it's
Hawaii.
pudding. He's got a pudding
It's
scheme.
very
There's-
minimalist.
This girl falls in love with him, and he's got to like get out of his shell. He's got all these kooky sisters,
Yeah.
but it's like maybe that kind of kooky romantic comedy is the movie that PTA wanted to make.
Well, he
what-
references. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say like one thing that's interesting is like he seems so, and this is the best thing about him, like confined by his like subjective view that he's gonna make it so much weirder than that. Like maybe, and it sounds like he feels that it's just like it's like hilarious. He probably sees it similar to you.
Yeah, I mean, he's referenced numerous. I mean, you were mentioning. I forget what you were likening it to, but
Last Tango in Paris.
no, not Last Tango in Paris. Well, just in terms of stylistic influence, he has mentioned like let's say Jacques Tati. He said he wanted to make a Jacques Tati film.
Absolutely.
He
yeah.
also
he references his own movies too.
yeah, and he also says he was thinking about in addition to like just wanting to make quote unquote an Adam Sandler film, he was thinking about like Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, like those types of movies. And he talks about those movies and Adam Sandler movies as like the type of movies that he'll always choose over like the down and dirty, depressing stuff. He's like, I don't want to watch Magnolia. Like I want to watch
Yeah.
Adam Sandler movies, you know, to sort of cheer him up.
the relationship that develops is very believable, and you know, there's to me a lot of the movie is about their budding relationship. It's about this trust that develops between them, and it's about her willingness to not overlook his shortfalls, but it's not a deal breaker.
Yeah, she accepts it.
I feel she is like kind of zero like. I'll say it first. I feel like she has zero agency in a way. She comes in and she has seen a photo of him and she's really into him. He acts very unchill. She loves it. He runs away from himself and abandons her at a hospital. She forgives him.
Well, that's much later in the relationship.
Yeah,
That's after
but I
he's
mean,
gone
like-
to Hawaii to be with her.
But that's after he leaves her apartment after she's like willing to spend the night with him. Like it is.
Well, that's
With
how,
one
but
of-
that's
And
but that's how, but that's how things are, you know.
And
Things,
it is
things
about
go
him,
crappy.
and it's like, and you know what, I'm realizing as I'm saying it, I kind of like it. It's a woman who likes somebody and she's into him, and he has to become ready, and it's a whole romance like with preparing himself. Like it's really not a romance of he's got to prove himself, and then she's got to like him how he is. She's into it the whole time.
Yep. But we see her learning these things, these different aspects of his personality, and she has to digest them. It takes time. And when he goes to her door after having abandoned her, you know, she sets him straight before she lets him in. You know, you can't do that. You know, and he agrees. So you know, she has plenty of agency. I think
In a regular movie, that should be a whole
you know,
act.
Well, this to me is what the movie is about. It's about this compatibility that develops between these two nerdy people.
What's her deal? She's like, we have a little backstory on her, and are there snippets that you picked up and watching it over and over that sort of explains her kind of odd rabbity
and,
vibe?
you know, I love this film a lot, and I don't think it falls into a lot of the classic traps of like the manic pixie dream girl, but it certainly comes close. And and I think that, I don't know, it's hard for me to think critically about this film because I just love it so much. But yeah, I mean, she was married before. That's basically the
And
backstory
she's
that we
British.
get. We also, I mean,
which gives her some cachet.
at the same time, I don't think we get a lot of backstory for anyone, really. We get that, like, Barry has had these quote-unquote troubles. Like, really, it's like you start off the movie, there's a man in a suit, and then you realize, oh, he hasn't been wearing this dumb suit this entire time.
Yeah.
Like, it's you know, it's just a discrete period in time, and you're kind of just picking it up. I think to bog it down with backstory, not to say that, you know, I don't think that Emily Watson's character couldn't have benefited from a bit more fleshing out. I think she does a great job with what she is afforded. But I think that's sort of, not to excuse that sort of maybe limp characterization, but I think it speaks to his influence or what he was going for with like the old Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, where he just wants to make a really euphoric movie about falling in love, and sometimes
And the stuff that he does with color on the segues between scenes, I love that stuff. It looks like little paintings.
There's a great artist named, well, sadly deceased artist named Jeremy Blake, who was also responsible for the cover for Beck's Sea Change, which has a lot of the same sort of swirling colors. He had a pretty sad end, actually, involving Scientology and suicide, maybe.
Maybe not suicide?
Well, I don't want to say. There's a very good New Yorker or New York Times article about it. But yeah, shortly after this movie was made.
Someone should make a movie and really blow up the leader of Scientology.
Yeah. But yeah, those moments, I love how it first happens. That sort of Jeremy Blake interstitial art first happens when he's gotten to work, and Luis Guzman is like, "What's with that piano?" And he's asking him like, "What's with the suit? What's with that pudding?" And all he says is like, "I don't know." And then the artwork just erupts. Like it's kind of nice because it's Adam Sandler's character Barry. You see on his face, he's like, "I don't know," but he's sort of a little intrigued by all these new developments in his life, but he doesn't understand any of them, and it just sort of erupts into this beautiful cascade of colors, which I don't know. I couldn't imagine this movie without any certain element, especially the music, which is a great.
Yeah, I really actually
one of the
to
best
bring it up
collaborations between filmmaker and musician, I think.
So when you talk about it being a romantic comedy, you're not expecting it to have a. It reminds me, this movie, the more we talk about it, reminds me of any of his movies of There Will Be Blood the most. Like, that's Johnny Greenwood's score, which is, I feel like, in a very different musical vocabulary, doing this same intensity rising, like a sort of progressing staccato towards a climax, which usually doesn't quite get there at the end of the scene. And so then you're in the next scene, and it just keeps going. And it makes me think about social anxiety. I know some people that have it very severely, and from what I gather from them, the music really seems to be getting
it's
at
so
that.
evocative. Yeah, I mean, yeah, because that's the thing that I've struggled with, but I'm more on top of these days. But just because he worked with John Bryan, the wonderful
this is John Bryan's music,
who was his I'd say primary collaborator before he moved to Johnny Greenwood. I mean, I hope they're still friends or whatever. But yeah, so the first half of the movie, the soundtrack is this bizarre, atonal, very aggressive. Like, it's hard to plot out the music. Like, there's like very little emphasis on melody. It's more percussion. It's more just weird, seemingly disparate elements that you wouldn't think work together, and they work together in the way that it doesn't work together. They work because they don't work, kind of, where there's just little zippity zappity noises and tin cans. Like, a lot of it was recorded in the warehouse. Like, while they were shooting, John Bryan was just composing these little snippets. And then, but on the other hand, you have this beautiful, swelling, orchestral, just fallen in love music, and also with a great usage of the song from Popeye, "He Needs Me," sung by Shelley Duvall.
And you've also got Adam Sandler plunking away on that little
playing
piano.
Basically the main theme, figuring it out on his own. It's such a strange,
It's a harmonium, right? Is that
it's a harmonium,
yeah.
And I could easily see...
It's a very cute little instrument.
Yeah, I could easily see sort of disparate elements of this film being made into another film by the studios at the same time, and it'd be like, Sixpence None the Richer, and There She Goes, and a bunch of radio hits, but it's, doing such a... Like, I'm glad it's, there's one or two previously written songs for the movie, but the way that John Bryan sort of gets at the heart of both sides of the movie, like the intense, really anxious side of it, and then just the euphoric side of it, it's really beautiful.
See, there's another time when he tells her the truth, when she asks him if he stole that harmonium off the street, and he said yes. He doesn't try and hide it. Well, I just want to thank Kenji, our wonderful guest, for coming on this week and sharing this very intriguing movie, Punch Drunk Love. and to Mike for bringing Banish the Dark Russian Imperial Stout, which has gotten us all a little tipsy.
A little drunk, maybe, I don't know, punch drunky. We didn't even get to why it's called Punch Drunk Love. That's for...
Because it's just about falling in love, man.
And you're gonna get punched
Fall in love
along the
hard,
way.
yeah.
You get punched along. All right, so, well, we answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you all for listening. Remember to turn your cell phones off when you're walking, driving, riding a bicycle, or watching a movie.